Ruth awoke to the sound of the wind howling through the cracks in the old wooden shack that served as her home. The sun had barely risen, but she could already feel the weight of another long day ahead. As an orphan, Ruth was left alone in a godforsaken spread, sold into servitude by strangers who saw her as nothing more than a tool for labor. Her small hands bore the calluses of hard work, and her heart held the heavy burden of sorrow. She trudged through the dusty yard, glancing at the vast fields that stretched endlessly before her. Each morning brought with it a reminder of her missing family, and each evening etched deeper lines of despair across her young face. With a deep sigh, she began her chores, hoping to finish quickly so she could steal a moment to dream of freedom, a life beyond the ranch where she could laugh and play like other children. The ranch itself was a harsh place ruled by a wrinkled rancher whose cruelty was as notorious as the arid landscape. He had bought Ruth along with several other orphans, believing they would work harder than adults. Every day felt like a test of endurance, with little room for hope. She bore not only the physical brand on her arm but also an emotional scar that reminded her of who she was, a girl trapped in an unforgiving world. As Ruth carried buckets of water from the well, memories of laughter echoed in her mind, memories she clung to like a lifeline. She thought about stories she had heard from travelers passing through. Tales of brave heroes and grand adventures filled her imagination, igniting a flicker of hope deep within her heart. Someday, she dreamed, someone would come along and change everything. While working, Ruth often glanced toward the horizon, watching for signs of life beyond the ranch. One day, while scrubbing pots in the kitchen, whispers traveled through the air from men gathered at the saloon nearby. They spoke in hushed tones about a gunman, a gentleman who was rumored to have made quite a name for himself in town. She didn't know much about him but felt an unexplainable connection to this stranger. Perhaps he was destined to find her. As dusk settled over the ranch and shadows grew longer, Ruth's longing for freedom intensified. She wished for a savior, a person with enough courage to stand up against the rancher's tyranny and challenge his authority. That night, as she lay on her straw-filled mattress, Ruth closed her eyes tightly and imagined what life could be like outside these walls, fields filled with flowers instead of dust and laughter echoing through open skies instead of silence. The faint sound of men's voices reached her ears from across the yard, mixing with the evening breeze. Little did she know that far away in that saloon, across whiskey glasses and stories shared among strangers, someone named Wes was learning about her plight, the tale that would soon intertwine their fates forever. The yearning for freedom surged stronger within her as hope flickered like a candle in the dark, small but unwavering. The ranch was a bleak landscape, dominated by the unforgiving sun and the relentless wind that swept across the parched earth. Dust clung to everything, and the air had an acrid smell that mixed with the scent of sweat and despair. Ruth spent her days laboring under the watchful eye of the rancher, a wrinkled man whose face seemed to carry the weight of every cruel decision he had ever made. He roamed the grounds with an air of authority, his sharp eyes scanning for any sign of weakness among the orphans. Ruth had seen him lash out at those who dared to falter in their tasks, his voice harsh and unforgiving. The rancher believed that fear kept the children in line, and he wielded it like a weapon. His mere presence sent shivers down Ruth's spine, reminding her daily of the power he held over their lives. Under his rule, every day was a test of endurance. The orphans were expected to rise before dawn, their small bodies tasked with endless chores that left them tired and sore. They tended to livestock, repaired fences, and worked the fields under blistering heat, all while their stomachs growled with hunger. Ruth often felt like a ghost, moving through her duties with little hope of change. Each chore served as a reminder of her lost childhood, a time when she could have laughed and played instead of toiling under a tyrant. Ruth's eyes often wandered toward a cracked window in the barn, where she could see the horizon stretching far beyond the ranch. That vast expanse of land seemed like a cruel tease, a glimpse of freedom just out of reach. She would daydream about running away, imagining herself sprinting across open fields filled with wildflowers instead of dry weeds. But each time despair washed over her like an unrelenting tide, reminding her that escape was not an option. The rancher's hired hands were just as menacing as he was. They moved about the property like wolves guarding their territory, and Ruth learned quickly to keep her head down around them. Their laughter often echoed through the yard, a dark irony against the backdrop of her suffering. These men reveled in their power over the orphans, finding amusement in bullying those they deemed weaker. Among them was a particularly cruel man named Hank who took pleasure in tormenting Ruth whenever he could. He would mock her dreams of freedom, leering as he reminded her that she was nothing more than property, an object to be used until broken. Each jeer cut deeper than any physical blow could. It was a constant reminder that hope could easily be extinguished. Yet even amidst such harshness, Ruth served as a symbol, a flicker of lost hope for those who shared her fate. The other orphans looked at her with a mix of admiration and pity. She embodied resilience in their shared suffering. In whispers at night, they spoke about dreams of better lives and brighter futures while clutching onto each other for comfort. As night fell over the ranch and stars twinkled above like scattered diamonds on black velvet, Ruth lay beneath a tattered blanket, staring up at the sky. The darkness around her couldn't drown out her longing for freedom, it only made it burn brighter within her heart. She knew deep down that something had to change, that hope could not be buried forever under layers of cruelty and despair. Wes strolled into the dusty little town, the sun casting long shadows over the weathered buildings. His presence was striking, tall and lean with an aura of confidence that caught the eyes of passers-by. A gentleman gun for hire, he wore a well-tailored coat that contrasted sharply with the roughness of the surroundings. Though he had seen his share of battles, Wes carried himself with a sense of honor that set him apart from the other gunslingers who roamed the West. After a long day on the trail, Wes felt a craving for whiskey and made his way to the local saloon. The wooden sign creaked as he pushed the door open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with patrons seeking solace from their troubles. He settled onto a bar stool and ordered a glass, savoring the warmth as it slid down his throat. The atmosphere buzzed with laughter and conversation, but Wes found himself distracted by an uneasy feeling brewing in his gut. As he took another sip of whiskey, his gaze drifted to the bartender, a wiry man with kind eyes who appeared worn by life's hardships. Sensing something deeper beneath Wes's calm demeanor, the bartender leaned in closer. "You look like you've seen some things," he said softly. "But this town has its own shadows." Wes raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you mean?" The bartender hesitated for a moment before continuing. "It's about Ruth," he murmured, lowering his voice as if afraid someone might overhear. "The girl sold into servitude." Curiosity piqued, Wes listened intently as the bartender's sympathetic tone painted a picture of unimaginable hardship. He learned about Ruth's plight on the ranch, a place where children worked like slaves under a cruel rancher's thumb. The bartender spoke of her strength amidst despair, her spirit refusing to be broken even when hope felt distant. "Ruth? She's just a child," Wes said incredulously. "How can anyone treat her like that?" The bartender nodded solemnly, pouring himself a drink before continuing. "She bears not only physical scars but emotional ones too, reminders of what she's lost." Wes felt anger rising in him as he listened to Ruth's story unfold, how she dreamed of freedom while tethered to such cruelty. Something within him shifted. He couldn't simply dismiss this girl's suffering as another tale of woe from an unfamiliar town. Finishing his drink, Wes set down his glass and looked at the bartender with newfound determination. "What can be done?" he asked, ready to take action. "People talk," the bartender replied cautiously. "But nobody dares cross the rancher or his thugs." A fire ignited in Wes's heart at those words. He could no longer ignore Ruth's struggles or close his ears to her cries for help. This wasn't just another job or gamble, it was personal now. With every ounce of respect for Ruth's bravery growing within him, Wes knew he had to find a way to free her from that godforsaken spread. He would need more than skill with a gun. He'd require courage and compassion to confront not just the rancher but also everything that oppressed her spirit. As night cloaked the town in darkness outside the saloon's windows, Wes made up his mind. He would become Ruth's unexpected savior, the one who wouldn't walk away from her plea for freedom. As Wes sat in the dim light of the saloon, the bartender's words echoed in his mind, pulling him deeper into contemplation. The image of Ruth, her youthful spirit trapped in a world filled with cruelty, stirred something within him, awakening memories long buried. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes, allowing the past to wash over him like the whiskey he had just consumed. Wes had not always been a gun for hire. Once, he had been a young boy living in a small town, surrounded by loving family and friends who cared for one another. But that life shattered when raiders attacked his home, leaving destruction and despair in their wake. He remembered the screams and the chaos, the way fear gripped him as he watched helplessly while his parents fought to protect him. In the end, he was left alone, forced to fend for himself in a world that felt utterly indifferent to his suffering. After losing everything, Wes had wandered from town to town, learning to survive on his own. He picked up skills that would serve him well: how to shoot accurately, how to read people's intentions, and how to navigate the harsh realities of life. Yet, amidst all the battles and brawls he faced, there was always a part of him that longed for the innocence he had lost, a part that wanted to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Listening to the bartender speak about Ruth, Wes felt a familiar pang of empathy. He recalled moments when he had come across other lost souls during his journeys, children abandoned or abused by circumstances beyond their control. Each time he had felt an urge to help them, but he often chose the path of self-preservation instead. It was easier to remain detached in a world filled with pain, but this time it felt different. Ruth's story resonated with his own past, awakening a sense of duty within him that he could no longer ignore. He opened his eyes and stared into his half-empty glass, realizing that he could not simply walk away from Ruth's plight. The thought of her enduring abuse under that rancher's thumb ignited a fire in his heart, one that urged him to confront the injustice he had witnessed too many times before. He knew he possessed the skills needed to challenge her oppressor, but would he have the courage to do so? Would he risk everything he had? Wes contemplated what it meant to be a savior. A part of him feared that getting involved could lead to more loss and heartache, but another part whispered that true strength lay in compassion and action. With each passing moment, he could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He could either remain an observer or become someone who made a difference. Determination surged within him as he rose from his stool, the decision made. He would not turn his back on Ruth or anyone else who suffered at the hands of cruelty. This was his chance to stand up for what was right and perhaps find redemption for the boy he once was, the boy who had wanted nothing more than to protect those he loved. The shadows of his past would not define him any longer. Instead, they would fuel his resolve as he prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead for Ruth's freedom. Wes stepped out of the saloon, the cool night air hitting him like a splash of water, invigorating and refreshing. The stars twinkled above, but his mind was consumed with thoughts of Ruth. He had been given a glimpse into her suffering, and it ignited a spark within him that he could no longer ignore. He felt as if he had finally found a purpose beyond mere survival, something worth fighting for. As he walked through the quiet streets, Wes began to form a plan in his mind. He needed to gather his gambling winnings, which had recently swelled from a successful streak at the tables. It was money that could buy Ruth's freedom from her wretched life on the ranch. But he knew it wouldn't be easy. He would have to face not only the rancher but also his hired thugs who guarded their master's interests fiercely. With each step, Wes's resolve solidified. He recalled the faces of those who had suffered under the rancher's tyranny, the lost children, like Ruth, who were trapped in a cycle of abuse and despair. The thought of them filled him with determination. He couldn't stand by while they continued to suffer. His first stop was the gambling hall where he had won his recent fortune. The dimly lit space buzzed with laughter and smoke as players wagered their fortunes on cards and dice. Wes pushed through the crowd, nodding at familiar faces but keeping his focus sharp. He approached the dealer's table and gestured for his chips, ready to cash out. "Feeling lucky tonight?" the dealer asked with a smirk. "Luck isn't what I need," Wes replied firmly. "I'm done playing for now." After collecting his winnings, Wes felt a sense of urgency wash over him. This money wasn't just chips or paper, it represented Ruth's chance at freedom. As he exited the hall, adrenaline coursing through him, he started strategizing how best to approach her rescue. He knew that confronting the rancher would require more than just money, it would take cleverness and courage as well. He began piecing together an idea. Perhaps he could create a diversion to draw the rancher's men away from Ruth while he made his move. The thought of rescuing her sent a thrill through him. He could already envision her hopeful eyes lighting up with joy. But there was still much to consider. What if things went wrong? What if he put himself in danger? Yet deep down, Wes understood that fear couldn't dictate his actions any longer. He had spent too long being passive in a world filled with injustice. This time, he would take charge of his destiny. As dawn approached, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Wes found himself standing at the edge of town, staring out toward the distant ranch where Ruth was held captive. In that moment, he made a silent vow not just to free her but to be someone she could rely on when all hope seemed lost. With determination surging within him like never before, Wes turned back toward town one last time to gather supplies for his mission and steel himself for what lay ahead. This was not just about saving one girl, it was about striking back against oppression and reclaiming hope for all those who felt powerless, a battle he was ready to face head-on. As dawn broke over the horizon, Wes felt a mix of excitement and anxiety coursing through him. He had gathered his winnings and prepared himself for Ruth's rescue, but the path ahead was fraught with danger. Each step toward the ranch was uncertain, and he knew that the rancher's hired thugs were not to be underestimated. He made his way back into town to pick up supplies, each quiet street echoing with the sound of his boots on the dusty ground. The weight of his decision pressed down on him as he entered the general store, scanning the shelves for items that might aid him in his mission. Just as he approached the counter, he caught sight of a familiar face, one of the rancher's thugs loitering by the door. The man's sharp eyes locked onto Wes, and Wes felt a chill run down his spine. "Looking for something?" the thug asked with a mocking grin, revealing crooked teeth. Wes forced himself to remain calm, reminding himself that he could not draw attention just yet. "I'm just stocking up," Wes replied casually, trying to keep his voice steady as he picked up a few supplies: rope, a small knife, and matches. Every item felt like it weighed a ton in his hands as he imagined how each would serve him in freeing Ruth. The thug stepped closer, invading Wes's personal space. "You don't belong around here." Wes met his gaze with cool defiance. "And yet here I am." With an unsettling laugh, the thug turned away, but not without giving Wes one last warning glance. As soon as he left the store, Wes could feel adrenaline surging through him. It was now or never. If he intended to save Ruth, he couldn't afford any more distractions. Rushing to leave town behind him, Wes took off toward the dusty trail that led to the ranch. A sense of purpose fueled each step. However, tension hung thick in the air as he envisioned what lay ahead. Shadows danced along the path as trees loomed above him like giants watching his every move. He arrived at the ranch just as midday sun blazed overhead, casting harsh light across the operations bustling below him. Hiding behind a cluster of trees, he observed everything: men working lazily in the fields and children scurrying about under watchful eyes, those same eyes that had witnessed Ruth's struggles. Wes carefully assessed his surroundings when suddenly he spotted Ruth through a weathered barn window, her small frame slumped over while she tended to chores. His heart sank at her plight. How could anyone treat her this way? A mixture of fury and compassion ignited within him. Just then, Wes noticed two hired thugs standing at a nearby shed engaged in laughter, a reminder that every moment brought an increased risk of discovery. He needed to act quickly and methodically if he hoped to rescue Ruth without alerting the entire ranch. Recalling what he had learned from stories shared among townsfolk at night about creating distractions, Wes hatched a bold plan. If he could draw some of those men away from their posts, it would give him room to slip into that barn unnoticed. With determination burning bright in his chest, he set off deeper into ranch territory, ready to do whatever it took to free Ruth from her chains. Tension coiled around him like a tightrope walk. Every decision carried weighty risks, but this was no longer just about money or pride. It was about hope and reclaiming innocence for someone who so desperately deserved it. As shadows lengthened behind him in preparation for evening's approach, Wes knew there was no turning back now. He was committed to this daring mission with everything on the line. The sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the ranch as Wes moved stealthily through the tall grass. His heart raced with anticipation, knowing that each moment brought him closer to confronting the rancher's hired thugs. The stakes were high. Ruth's freedom depended on his courage. He could already picture her small face lighting up with hope, and that image drove him forward. Crouching behind a cluster of barrels, Wes peered around the corner of the barn. Two of the rancher's thugs were huddled together, apparently engrossed in a game of cards. Wes felt a surge of adrenaline. This was his chance. He took a deep breath, recalling the plan he had crafted. Creating a diversion was essential to drawing them away from where Ruth was held. With steady hands, Wes picked up a loose rock and hurled it toward a stack of crates on the opposite side of the barn. The loud crash startled both men, who quickly stood up, reaching for their weapons. "What was that?" one of them barked, scanning the area with suspicion. "Let's check it out," the second thug replied, glancing at his companion before they both moved toward the sound. Wes seized this opportunity, darting silently toward the barn door where Ruth was trapped. Inside, the air was musty, filled with the scent of hay and despair. Wes's heart pounded as he approached a small window, peering inside to see Ruth hunched over a pile of hay. She looked exhausted and worn, but even in that moment, she radiated strength. Relief washed over him when he saw that she hadn't noticed him yet. Just then, shouting erupted outside as one of the thugs returned to the barn, his eyes filled with anger. "Hey, where do you think you're going?" Wes's instincts kicked in. He needed to act fast. He burst through the barn door just as the thug lunged at him. The confrontation escalated quickly as Wes felt rage surge within him, not just for himself but for Ruth and all the others who had been wronged by this cruel existence. Wes narrowly dodged a fist aimed at his face before delivering a swift kick to the thug's midsection. The man staggered back, gasping for air. Wes seized the opportunity to grapple with him, throwing punches that were fueled by pent-up frustration and righteous anger. "Get away from her!" Wes shouted as he managed to pin the thug to the ground. The fight had drawn more attention. He could hear footsteps approaching from outside as other thugs realized something was amiss. With every ounce of strength surging through him, Wes pushed himself off the thug and sprinted towards Ruth. He reached her just in time to see another thug barreling through the barn door, gun drawn. "Run!" he shouted at Ruth, grabbing her hand and pulling her with him as they dashed for an exit. The sound of gunfire erupted behind them, sending splinters flying from the wooden beams of the barn. Wes's heart raced as they bolted through an opening just before it was blocked by chaos. He could hear shouts and commands being barked from all sides. They were outnumbered and cornered, but his resolve only intensified. "Stay close," he urged Ruth as they navigated through the labyrinth of farm equipment and hay bales. Every moment felt like an eternity as they dodged around corners and ducked beneath low-hanging tools. "Why are you helping me?" Ruth asked breathlessly, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Because you deserve to be free," Wes replied firmly as they reached a side exit leading to a narrow alley between buildings. At that moment, he realized this fight wasn't just for Ruth, it symbolized everything he had lost and everything he wanted to protect moving forward. He would not let fear dictate his actions any longer. This battle was about reclaiming hope for both of them. With determination lighting their path, Wes led Ruth into the open air, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead together, fueled by bravery and an unyielding desire for freedom against all odds. With adrenaline still coursing through their veins, Wes and Ruth fled the chaos of the ranch. The sounds of shouting and gunfire faded behind them as they sprinted through the narrow alley, hearts pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. A wild sense of freedom was beginning to envelop them, like a soft embrace after years of darkness. As they reached the cover of the trees just outside the ranch perimeter, they slowed down, catching their breath. Wes turned to look at Ruth, her face lit by the fading light of dusk. She looked both vulnerable and fierce, a warrior spirit igniting within her from the flames of oppression she had just escaped. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with concern. Ruth nodded slowly, her eyes wide with disbelief. I can't believe we're free," she whispered, emotions swirling as reality sank in. "You really came for me." "I promised I would," Wes replied, feeling a surge of pride and relief wash over him. He gently squeezed her hand, a comforting gesture that spoke volumes about the bond they had formed in their harrowing adventure. Realizing they were not out of danger yet, Wes assessed their surroundings. The sun was setting on the horizon, casting a warm glow over the landscape as it dipped below the tree line. He focused on their next move. They needed to find a safe place to hide until the thugs were no longer searching for them. "Come on, we need to keep moving," he urged softly. "There's a small cabin not too far from here that I know about. It used to be abandoned but should be safe for now." Together, they hurried through the dense foliage, remaining alert for any signs of danger. As they made their way deeper into the woods, Ruth began to open up about her experiences as an orphan on the ranch, her dreams shattered and hopes dimmed under the weight of servitude. Wes listened intently. Each word she spoke solidified his determination to protect her and ensure she would never again endure such cruelty. After what felt like hours navigating through the trees, they finally spotted the cabin nestled among the underbrush. It was weathered but sturdy, offering sanctuary as they slipped inside. Dust motes danced in the narrow beams of light streaming through a cracked window. They shared a moment of silence, relief washing over them as they closed the door behind them. "Thank you for saving me," Ruth said softly after a few moments, breaking the stillness that had settled between them. Wes met her gaze, his heart swelling with warmth. "You deserve to be free," he replied honestly. "No one should have to go through what you did." They sat on the rough wooden floor together, leaning against the cool wall, sharing stories long into the night, stories of hope, resilience, and dreams for a brighter future far removed from oppression. In that shared space, they began to imagine what life could be beyond the confines of fear. Ruth envisioned schools where children laughed instead of slaved away, while Wes dreamed of using his skills to help others escape injustice he once felt powerless against. With each word exchanged, their bond deepened. A partnership forged in adversity, now blooming with promise. As sleep began to take hold, Wes felt a sense of peace settle within him. They had faced great danger and emerged victorious together. Though challenges lay ahead in their newfound freedom, he knew they could face anything as long as they stood side by side. Together they could reclaim not just their lives but also hope, an unbreakable spirit ignited by courage and friendship that would guide them into this new chapter ahead. The morning sun broke through the trees, casting warm rays over the cabin where Wes and Ruth had found refuge. For the first time in a long while, Ruth felt a sense of calm wash over her, as if the weight of her past was beginning to lift. She glanced at Wes, who was gazing out the window with a determined spirit. Together, they had survived the darkest of nights, and now they were ready to embark on a new journey. "Are we really free?" Ruth asked softly, still grappling with the concept of liberation after years of servitude. Her voice trembled slightly, a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Wes turned to her, his expression earnest. "Yes, we are. We may have left the ranch behind, but it's up to us to carve out a future that belongs to us." He smiled reassuringly, feeling the bond they had forged during their escape strengthen with each passing moment. As they prepared to leave the cabin and face the world outside, Wes gathered his thoughts about what lay ahead. They needed a plan, a way to navigate their newfound freedom and ensure their safety from any lingering threats. "Let's head for town," he suggested. "We can find shelter and work there until we figure out our next steps." Ruth nodded, her heart swelling at the thought of independence. The idea of finding work filled her with excitement. She could finally be more than just someone's property. "I could help cook or clean," she exclaimed, feeling empowered by her own capabilities. "Absolutely," Wes agreed, his eyes lighting up at her enthusiasm. "And I can lend my skills wherever needed." He felt a sense of pride knowing that they would take on this challenge together, two warriors united by their shared struggles. As they set off into the bright day, Wes felt an unexpected weight lift from his shoulders. The road ahead might be uncertain, but it was also filled with endless possibilities. With each step they took away from the ranch, Wes reflected on how far they had come, from being trapped in darkness to embracing a future filled with light. With Ruth by his side, he felt invincible. She represented not only hope for herself but also for those who had suffered like her. Their journey wasn't just about escaping oppression, it was about reclaiming their lives and inspiring others to seek freedom as well. Along the way, they shared laughter and dreams, simple joys that felt foreign yet beautiful after their harrowing experiences. They spoke of places they wanted to visit and adventures they hoped to embark on together, like climbing mountains or swimming in rivers where no chains could bind them. As dusk fell again on their journey that evening, they found themselves sharing stories beneath a canopy of stars. With every word exchanged, their friendship deepened, a testament to resilience and courage in the face of adversity. "Thank you for believing in me," Ruth said quietly as she gazed up at the twinkling sky. Wes chuckled softly. "You've always been stronger than you know." In that moment, both realized that freedom wasn't just about escaping, it was also about forging connections and building a life filled with purpose and love. Together, they would face whatever obstacles came their way, knowing that true strength lay not only in their individual journeys but also in the friendship they had found amidst the darkness. With hearts full of hope and determination for a brighter future ahead, Wes and Ruth stepped forward into the unknown, ready to embrace life's adventures hand in hand, leaving behind their dark pasts forever.